Hello, everyone, and welcome to this installment of Ask CCSA Caribbean Clean Energy Initiatives. I'm your host, Diane Squires, and today I will have the pleasure of chatting with Mr. Damani Thomas, who is the founder, CEO, and head researcher of the Carbon Neutral Initiative. Now, Damani is 25 years old. He hails from Ocho Rios, Jamaica. He also holds a bachelor's degree in environmental studies with a focus on global environment issues and engineering. And importantly, he is the inventor of the defossilized 30 biofuel, which is a semi-synthetic biofuel that has a higher energy density than E10. So people, this is a lot to understand and a lot to unpack. We're going to ask you to put your questions using the hashtag AskCCSA on whatever channel you're viewing this live stream on. We have Damani here, so this is the perfect time to ask those questions as we talk about defossilized 30 and the carbon neutral initiative. Damani, welcome and thank you for joining us. This is so exciting. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. And you?
I'm wonderful, thanks. Excited to start the discussion.
Same here. Very excited.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, of course, to give people some background. Of course, they're going to wonder, what is the Carbon Neutral Initiative and what inspired you to start that company?
All right, so to put it in a very short and concise way, the Carbon Neutral Initiative is a Jamaica-born clean tech company found to developing countries reach sustainable development goals through creating climate-resilient technologies. Now, we are in a number of fields where we have a field in carbon capture and also in clean energy, because those two things, I believe, that would have the greatest impact when lowering carbon emissions, improving our energy source and removing carbon and decarbonizing transport.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about decarbonizing transport, but this is clearly a path of climate action. Why are you walking this path? Why is that important to you?
Right, so I believe it's my purpose, because from I was very young, I was always into the environment, nature, science, animals, and had a very strong dislike against, well, pollution, as everyone should. So that is the number one reason why I decided that, hey, why not do this? Because this is the direction I was looking to my entire life. From I was about in grade 5, I think that's the first time I took an interest in science. And from then I decided that I wanted to be a scientist. And even when I forgot about those, childish dreams, I was still unknowingly following it. So when I became about 21, I realized that, hey, I already have two solutions that is very good on, lowering pollution and so on. So I decided to start a company from it.
Wow. At 21, so you would have completed your studies at that point?
I was still studying. So the thing about that is I started working on the defossilized 30 fuel when I was about 15 in high school. I think it was about in grade 10 that we started working on it. The way I came about creating that solution was, cartoon Tom and Jerry. Yeah, so they were, I think the scene was that they were running around in a nuclear fusion area, power plant. And I decided that if you could apply fusion and fission in that way, what way I could apply it to an energy source that suits Jamaica, because Jamaica will not be using nuclear anytime soon. So we have to use a solution that is, here. And so I did, and that's how I started the path to creating the D30 fuel. And after various failures, like hundreds of failed formulas, headaches, and so on, got something that finally worked. So it came from literally the nothing, from fiction to nothing to something-ish to better than what is actually here now.
Yeah. So you're 25. So that sounds like 10 years of development
10
already.
years of excruciating development, yes.
So describe for us, maybe if you want to go a little bit more in depth, the technologies and the products that the Carbon Neutral Initiative is currently developing. You talked about D30, but if we want to talk about any other initiatives and products that you've got going.
All right, so as you would realize, I've been working on it from I was about 15, so that was my first solution. However, not long after, when I think it was about my first year in college, I decided on creating another solution where I wanted to create something that would decarbonize transport directly. And through that, I came up with the carbon attack filter. And it's a biodegradable carbon capture filter for passenger cars. What it does is that it captures pollutants, emissions such as carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur, nitric acid, all the rest, and even soot. And the greatest thing about that solution is how carbon circular it is. Like after the filter is used up, you can use that waste and put it in soil because it has a stable pH. It can help increase the pH of soil. And it also has the harmful emissions that is harmful to us are actually all great chemicals to plants. The nitrogen, the carbon, the sulfur, all of that are needed macronutrients and micronutrients in soil. So we take something that would be harmful in the air to us, put it in soil, where it would be sequestered and absorbed by microorganisms, and really it can bring back acidic soil.
Honestly, congratulations on these solutions, Damani. We want to get a little bit more into D30. So you talked about that cartoon scene that you were thinking of. You're clearly a scientist and have been interested, but why now think so much about biofuels and that field? And then why create a fuel yourself?
All right, so we decided to get really in-depth in the energy field because of the energy crisis. We made that decision to pivot because we were putting a lot of focus on the carbon attack filter, but then the Russian invasion, the energy crisis that has been plaguing us from, I think, from 2020, from the pandemic, because there was a fallout in a lot of cars were not operational because no movement, and because of that create an energy spike, and for some reason there's an energy crisis now. So I decided that, hey, many countries are bound to fall apart because of this solution, as we have seen with Kazakhstan, Sri Lanka, even some parts of Kenya, some parts of South Africa currently as scheduled blackouts because energy crisis. And even the great superpowers like in Europe and America also have been have super high prices. Some places $4 and $5 per gallon, and in Europe it's even worse. So if those countries that have been the most stable and rich countries all along, what is going to happen to developing countries like ourselves that don't have any oil mines and so on? So I decided that I wanted to create a solution that is tailored to our infrastructure, in the sense that we use fossil fuels. And the cleanest thing next to fossil fuel, well, fossil fuel is not clean by any definition, but the best thing that we could use with our infrastructure and our budget is biofuel. So that's why I decided to say, hey, let's create a biofuel. It's cleaner than what we have now. It can cut a lot of emissions, and it can cut, most importantly, prices. So what the B30 fuel is about is to really cut fossil fuel dependency and free up a budget for a developing country. Because the number one issue as to why most countries are not on more renewable energy is because they spend most of their GDP or money on the current energy needs. So they can't build a large enough infrastructure that is scalable to replace said energy needs because they're already spending that money to, meet the current energy needs. And that's just basically they get locked into a paradigm. So that way, using the D30 fuel, you can slowly pull that lock and then finally on the road to cleaner energy.
Yeah. Well, in the introduction, we mentioned a couple of words there: semi-synthetic, biofuel, D30, higher density, higher energy density than E10. Explain to us what D30 biofuel is and how it works. Let's try to break this down for the audience very, very simply.
Yes, so semi-synthetic mean that it's a bit processed. However, economically, even though it's a bit more processed, it can still have a lower cost than what we have right now. Now, thinking about it in the most literal sense, all fuels can fall under the definition of semi-synthetic, in the sense where it was processed before. It was processed from its original form, which is crude oil, and then put in a chamber to determine such a heaviest to lightest types of fuel. However, with the D30 fuel, it's a bit more processed, in the sense where we take local renewable resources such as ethanol, which is a highly renewable resource. We process that ethanol into higher alcohols, and then we blend that with a significantly less amount of petrol or diesel. And that's how we get the B30 fuel. It's a minimum blend of 30% to 70%. But we have done tests on even lower amounts. We did tests on you could call that a D40, meaning 40% defossilized material and 60% petroleum. Now, to give the definition on what it means to have a higher energy density, now E10 has a lower energy density than raw petrol because that's the introduction of ethanol. Ethanol is of a 30% lower energy density than petrol. So that means that it burns out much faster than raw petrol would. Now, what we decided to do is that let's take that locally highly available and easily renewable ethanol and process it into something that has a higher energy density and more stable than ethanol. So that way, this fuel can be sent through gas pipelines as opposed to E10, because ethanol is corrosive. So because of that, you can't transport it through gas pipelines. You have to make it at the ethanol plant and then bring it to the blending station, and then from there to the service station. With our fuel, it can be made directly at either the ethanol plant or the petroleum refinery. Yes, it can be blended directly at the refinery and sent straight to the service station.
Okay, so let me see if I can summarize, tell you that I understand. So D30 means that you've got a minimum of 30% of renewable energy sources that are part of this fuel.
Yes.
And then the remainder of it, so it's a blended with the regular kind of fossil fuel generated fuel, petrol.
Yes.
And so that's D30. And you can then produce that in existing infrastructure, and it's less corrosive than some of the fuel blends that we have now.
Yes, and significantly cheaper. So, so let's say, for instance, Jamaica spend $1 million on fossil fuel. We can now spend 700,000 and still meet the same quota as we would with $1 million. So that way, we can get countries to stop spending all of their money on their energy needs, rework the budget so they can, okay, we can meet our energy needs, but we can put forward some money to a renewable infrastructure. So that way they can slowly break out of the cycle under the heel of fossil fuels in about 5 to 10 years, faster than they would naturally using current infrastructure.
No, we did have a question just before we started the live stream, actually, and this relates to the question that we had here at the CCSA. Our question was about how D30 compares to other fuels in terms of cost. You just explained that really well. Energy density, you talked about that too, and also sustainability. So someone in the audience wanted to know, well, how green is this process if it's semi-synthetic?
Right, so how green is the process? Well, it's pretty green. It's greener than what we use now because being that it is a synthetic fuel, it has a much lower carbon footprint than fossil fuels. It's the same concept with aviation fuels. You see, of sustainable aviation fuels or safe aviation fuels that has a 80% lower carbon footprint than fossilized aviation fuels that they would make at the refinery. Is the same concept. So it cuts carbon footprint using that concept, and it cut costs by spending less on said fossil fuels. So the green come from the fact that the semi-synthetic process produces little emissions, and buying less fossil fuels also accounts for that much lower amount of emissions also.
Okay.
And burns cleaner also, being that it's alcohol blend.
Perfect. Great. So I know that you talked about 10 years in development. What challenges have you faced in developing this semi-synthetic biofuel, and how have you faced those challenges, or how are you still facing those challenges to overcome them?
All right. So up until for the first 7 to 8 years, it was very slow because I did not have as much support. Just a typical nobody from Ocherius. So I went to Money College, and that's where I got some support to get into conversations, and I met PCJ back then, and from there we started to get into more conversations, and one of our first help was the DIA Labs, Democratizing Innovation in the Americas. Very great organization. They were a great help to us and continue to be a great help. But the last 3 years, starting from 2020, we have gotten an exponential amount of support. We now have the support of the Caribbean Climate Innovation Center also. They have been helping us to develop our solution, develop our business plan, and so on. Also have international support from the European Technology Chamber. I'm currently on their Energy Alliance board. I will be featured in their book sometime this year, where I wrote about renewable energy and sustainable aviation fuels. So I'm looking forward to see how that turns out. We also have support from Inclusive Capitalism. They're a new international organization, and also Founders Institute, which is one of our greatest supports in the last year.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. But of course, you had to keep at it for 8
Yes.
years.
Like there
before.
was a lot of hundreds of cold emails, hundreds of unread messages on LinkedIn. You know, to start from not knowing anyone to trying to get that feature, trying to get that mentor, you know, it's been super difficult, but you know, there's a saying that everything is hard, so you have to choose hard. Staying poor is also very difficult. Getting rich is also very difficult. Doing things for the environment, very difficult. Doing nothing, doing nothing is very difficult, and doing everything is very difficult. It's just all about timing.
And consistency too, clearly, and tenacity to stick to it. So we talked about the challenges of those 8 years, and then the next 3 years having unfolded a lot of opportunities for you. What do you think to date has been the biggest accomplishment with the development of the D30 fuel, especially?
All right, so I would say the biggest accomplishment I did with the D30 fuel was from finding out how versatile it actually is. Because even though I invented it, it was like you ever heard of the story The Pearl? That's a story that we had to read
Yes.
in high school. And there was a story where the person that found the pearl did not know the value.
Yes.
That's literally my story. I did not know what I created. So after finding out that the D30 fuel is applicable to not only gasoline, but it's applicable to biodiesel, and it's applicable to aviation fuels, which is a massive market, a super massive market. Like the leading companies that are in aviation fuel only take up about less than 5%. So it's still a very open field. And what we were able to do is that we were able to create a new process, still in development, but the fact that we were able to get that lead to say, okay, we have a process that exponentially improve the current alcohol to jet aviation fuel production process, in the sense that when we took a look at that process and we decided that how the D30 can be applied to this, and we applied it and we found that, hey, these are some great numbers and great leads. So we were asked by the International Air Transport Association in the UK, because one of our great mentors, Nicholas Coates, he was willing to introduce us to that organization, and they said that they're interested in aviation fuels. So if I'm able to come up with an aviation fuel, then they're willing to give me a chance. And about 2 weeks later, after no sleep, we able to create a lead on creating an aviation fuel. And we haven't met with them as yet because we want to prepare as much as possible. So if we get our current milestones out of the way, and then we can move on to aviation fuels, in which we have high hopes for the aviation fuel market in the future.
So to our audience, guys, the discussion is heating up here. I'm getting I have so many more questions, but I know you must have too. So with using the hashtag #AskCCSA, please remember to send your questions to us while we have Damani here. We're talking about defossilized 30, or D30 for short, which is a semi-synthetic biofuel developed right here in the Caribbean by Damani's company, the Carbon Neutral Initiative. So ask your questions using the hashtag #AskCCSA. Damani, an aviation fuel, that is big, because we're now talking global. We're not just talking about the Caribbean region and our transport sectors here in the islands where we are. But let's talk now about when you go from regional to international. Surely we're talking about different standards and regulations and so on. So how have you managed to ensure that the D30 fuel meets all regulatory and safety standards, both here in the region? So you have to think about the region here, and then of course, as you go global for the different use cases that you're developing, like aviation fuel.
Yes, so naturally it will take a lot of more research when we reach that level. However, we were very strategic in our partnerships. So with Founders Institute, they decided that yes, they will be of help to us. The European Technology Chamber, they're basically a great authority in Europe where development of such solutions are concerned. They are well connected, different universities. So we are not concerned about getting those standards met because I believe we have the support. It's just to, as long as we clear our current hurdles, it will be more or less more smooth sailing, at least smoother sailing compared to back then, which is I was willing to weather through that time, so I'm more than willing to weather through this also.
Well, we haven't talked about this part. So we know that you're the head researcher, you're the founder, you're the inventor, but what kind of a team does it take to pull this together? What's the team like? What's the team environment like?
Right, so our team has been, our team is very small. Our team consists of about 4 of us actively and supported by a large amount of mentors in the energy space. Now, what I would do is that I would make something, run it by the mentors, see what they think, because they are engineers and they are engineers that work with different oil companies. One of our team members, which is mainly a mentor, she worked with Shell USA, and another one of our mentors is based in India. Well, it's based all over the world, but it started in India, and he also helps us, and is most passionate about the aviation fuel.
Okay. Now, what kind of impact do you think your invention will have on the environment? If you could quantify, I mean, we talked about lower emissions and so on, but anything more that you'd want to elaborate there, so maybe we have more statistics, especially for the region?
All right, so we cut our benefits in 3. Now we cut it to environmental benefits, economic benefits, social benefits. Now, as for the environmental benefits, our solution takes off about 315,000 tons of carbon a year here in the Jamaican market, at about 80% of the market. And that's the equivalent of taking off 105,000 cars off the road. That's for our environmental benefit. As for economic benefits, the economic benefits are vast. You could even say a lot of what I've been speaking about earlier was economic benefits. But one of the number one things in our economic benefit is carbon credits. So by lowering our carbon footprint by so much, we can get Jamaica at least $10 million in carbon credits by using the D30 fuel. So you not only lower your costs, but you bring value to the carbon market, which is great for Jamaica's economy also. And as for social benefits, this fuel improves efficiency by more than 4%. So that means that less frequent visits to the service station, being that this is a more energy dense fuel, meaning that it has more energy in it, so it lasts longer. So it benefits all along the value chain, all along the supply chain, everyone. So from the environment, the government, the end user, everyone benefits.
Okay, so we've got 105,000 cars off the road, $10 million in carbon credits, and improved efficiency because it's longer lasting, which are obviously great benefits and wonderful impact. Now, when you think about the research and development that you have been doing and what's being done across the world. So through your partners, you know a lot that has been going on. What opportunities do you see for further development and research in this particular field, biofuels?
Right. So the possibilities are endless, to be honest. It's just a matter of being in that specific geography, because being that the climate crisis is very, very much a crisis, there are a lot of funds set aside to get into companies that mitigate those problems. I've gotten a lot of links from other connections speaking about funds for certain type of project that we fall in, but we can't capitalize on them because we're not based in Europe or in the US as yet. So with later on, as I said, with clearing our current hurdles here in the Jamaican market, we will fully capitalize on what's going on in the global market soon enough.
Okay, so still have a couple more questions for you, Damani. We're going really well here, and I want to encourage anyone else who has any questions to use the hashtag AskCCSA and drop your questions on whatever social media channel you're following the live stream on. But let's continue, Damani. How will you ensure that the production of D30 fuel is sustainable? We touched on this before, I think, but when we're talking, I think you're now at the prototype stage. Is that what you would call it, or have you gone beyond that stage so far?
Yes, the D30 fuel is not just petroleum. So for one, we are at our pilot stage. For one, we are at our prototype stage, and for one, we are at our development stage.
Explain.
First development stage. So for the aviation fuel, first development stage. The diesel prototype, because we are still doing lab tests. And as for the petrol, we are looking to do our field testing in about 2 months. We have been able to get the support of Petrojam, which I'm greatly thankful for. We are looking into how we can work together to really make a solution that will be of great benefit to Jamaica and, of course, the infrastructure that is running our energy programs, which is Petrojam. So we are looking to get everything as sustainable as possible. Now, as to answer your first question, no, the D30 fuel was built for the very reason of attaining sustainability. Now, we're looking to lower fossil fuel emissions, lower fuel prices, and so on. So the D30 fuel is sustainability.
Mm-hmm. And for the clarity for those in our audience who don't live in Jamaica, you mentioned Petrojam, and
yes, Petrojam is the local refinery. Okay,
great. And that's the major refinery in Jamaica, is it?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I think this is kind of a lead off of some of the other questions that we had with cost and so on. But for the region specifically, what advantage do you see from implementing your solution? So we're talking regionally. CCSA has 28 member countries across the region, the English-speaking Caribbean, as well as some of the Spanish-speaking neighbors and so on, and some in Latin America as well. So the advantages for us specifically in this region.
Right, so the advantage for us, well, if it was left up to me, I would like for the Caribbean to be the place where the aviation fuel is most made and sold. That way, we can have capital coming into the Caribbean region from all over the world. So that way, we can at least have a piece of the cake in our infrastructure. when it comes to making the D30 aviation fuel. Because if all goes well, it just may be able to serve as a major process to creating aviation fuel if the research goes well enough, because it shows a glimmer of sustainability, but we just started. But we're super hopeful about it. All the most senior members on the team are super hopeful about it and say that, hey, it's sustainable. And we're just looking to really improve everything as much as possible.
And you mentioned infrastructure there. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that, because what kind of infrastructure is needed for D30 production as you see it right now? And to what extent can the existing infrastructure that we have in some of the fossil fuel producing kind of countries they're producing petrol already, how can that infrastructure work for D30, or can it?
Right. So any country that make E10 is fully able to make D30. So if you have an ethanol plant, then you can make D30. So I think the only additional thing you would need is about a few more storage tanks. And that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
so
you would need a few more storage tanks to keep the D30 in. But apart from that, we don't see any major costs associated with using this in the current infrastructure.
Okay, perfect. So we're using existing infrastructure as far as we can tell, and we know that there are countries already in the region who they have that infrastructure. And you've got the partnership with Petrojam as well. So this sounds extremely promising, Damani. You talked before about that process of the 8 years before, the 3 years from 2020 until now, and some of the milestones that you've already hit. When you think of the big picture, what is that big picture now, and what are the milestones that you think you have ahead of you?
Right. So the milestones we have ahead is, well, we have a lot, because we basically have about 3 solutions to bring to the market. But our most immediate milestones for this year is to get our pilot project on the road. We secured the partnership with Petrojam. We also secured a partnership with another company called 876 Get. They're a logistics company where they go around and basically anything you order, they deliver it to you. So they use cars. So I met with their CEO, and they are interested in producing the cars for us to do our testing, and we are very grateful for that. So we will be working together with them. So as for our further milestones, apart from the field testing, we'll be doing our third-party testing. That will be done mostly at the refinery, because they offer those testing services. So or by testing our fuel there, it will improve our name, in the sense that this fuel is tested and backed by this major refinery. So it will improve our reputation, in the sense that we are now more credible. We are aiming to do some more research with university institutions on board, so that will also help in our credibility also. We're aiming to crank down some more on our biodiesel research and scale up from there.
Mm-hmm. Sounds wonderful. We didn't touch on, this is just something that I thought maybe we should just quickly discuss. We talked about aviation fuel. As you know, there's a push in many Caribbean countries now when it comes to private vehicles and commercial vehicles on island to switch to EV or electric vehicles, again, to reduce emissions. But Is D30 also a good alternative, do you think, or is this one of the use cases for private vehicles and commercial fleets on land?
Yes. Now, as for the EV, right, so EV is sustainable, granted that there is the grid is renewable. So if the grid is not clean, EV even more unclean, because energy is lost in the power lines. So it takes more energy to charge an EV than it would to put some petrol in a car. So if the grid is not clean, EV cannot be considered clean either. But it lowers emission, which has its own benefits, in which it cleaner air quality and so on. So I believe that, of course, EV it will be necessary. And because of that, the D30 fuel is not worried in any sense, because our goal is to help these countries get renewable infrastructure using some type of using money from their current energy budgets.
Mhm.
So because the D30 fuel is a highly versatile, we are most interested in the sustainable aviation fuel market. So that will be our main focus, but we say that we can use in petrol, in diesel. So we're aiming to just make some research funds from there and then fund the aviation fuel research. So we knock as much birds with as little stone as possible.
Fantastic. Damani, it has been such a pleasure to have you, but I don't want you to leave unless we can tell the audience where can they find the carbon neutral initiative, either online, offline, how can they get in contact, and how can they stay on the journey as you continue your research and development with D30 and other products?
Right. So we have our website, which is carbonneutralinitiative.net. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. We're on Instagram as the carbon_neutral, well, carbon-neutral-initiative, all in lowercase. And or bio says carbon attacker track. So that is our Instagram page. We're also on Facebook as Carbon Neutral Initiative. You can get to me via email at damanithomas23@gmail.com or at carbon.neutral.ja@gmail.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn as Damani Thomas.
Fantastic. So again, Damani, congratulations on the journey so far. Congratulations on the invention of D30, defossilized 30 biofuel, and the carbon attack filter as well, and whatever other products come about. I mean, we certainly want to be able to continue to support, expose, make the Caribbean region aware of entrepreneurs like yourself, innovators like yourself. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our audience who joined us on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. And we look forward to following you on the journey, Damani.
Thank you. I look forward to having you all